Maryanne Stoeppler, United States Army, Vietnam. Maryanne served with the 95th Evac hospital in Da Nang in Vietnam in the late 60s as an Army nurse, and she tells some amazing stories, just like a lot of you watched Lou Eisenbrand's story. Well, this is right along the same line. She was with the 91st. Maryanne served with the 95th Evac hospital. I interviewed Maryanne in Spartanburg, South Carolina, March 23rd, 2007. It's been a number of years. Her story lives on. Folks, thank you, Angela Simmons, for making this possible to watch the story today with Maryanne. Thank you, Angie. Appreciate your support and you and Terry's support of my work. God bless you, love you. And we've got another good one here for you folks. So if you'd like to sponsor, consider becoming a sponsor. Folks, please look at the video description. There's information there and in the comment section and on my website, LarryCapetto.com. I've got a great little promotional video called Capturing Courage on Camera. It'll be at the end of this video, so please watch it. It'll really inspire you, and I would really ask for your help with this, because there's a lot of stories out there that need to be told, and I need your help. So God bless you and thank you. So happy Thanksgiving this week, everybody. It's Thanksgiving week, so I'm proud to bring you Maryanne's story here on the Voices of History channel. Please share these videos, subscribe to the channel, and let's keep this thing going. God bless you. Hey, we're rolling already.
Oh my goodness.
So,
okay.
Briefly, your involvement in the military, you joined the military what year? Or did you join? How did you get involved?
Well, I was reared as an Air Force brat.
Okay.
And I went to nursing school in Pensacola, Florida. And because of expenses and so forth, I decided that it might not be a bad idea to join the service. They would pay my last year of school, and I would owe them 2 years in return. At the time, because Pensacola is a Navy aviation capital of the world,
Pensacola is?
Pensacola is the mother-in-law of the Navy for aviators. And I was engaged to a Marine aviator at the time. All Marines had a tour of duty of 13 months overseas, so we knew he would be there. And so it just didn't seem like a bad thing to do, to be in the service. And while he was in the service, and so I went down to talk to the recruiter about this. Upperclassmen were in the services and driving new cars and not having debts and being able to pay off your loans and that sort of thing. But I told him that I did not want to go to Vietnam. I wanted to be here when my fiancé returned. So he said, well, women do not go to Vietnam unless you volunteer. Well, I wanted to see that in writing. I said, I just wanted to be reassured, because so many people have heard about recruiters and what they can say and if they really say the truth and so forth. And so I had a letter with a Defense Department's letterhead on it that said, only women who volunteer go to Vietnam. So I felt very good about that. Went through past boards, was officer in the service, sent to the station that I requested, Monterey, California. I was at Fort Ord for a year. Went beyond my anniversary date, and people that go over to Vietnam always, in the Army, it's a year's tour, 12 months. So my anniversary came and I said, yes, we had the biggest party. Everything was going good. And within a month, I got orders for Vietnam. So I went to the legal office and they just laughed at me and said, Lieutenant, the needs of the service have changed. Goodbye. They didn't want to give me time to get my car back home. I was in California. My parents were in South Florida. My fiance's mother was in Michigan. And so, again, appealing to the legal office, because I was an officer, we were able to come up with about a week's leave that I could get so I could get home and at least say goodbye to everybody, take care of my needs, get my car and my personal effects in order. And that's what I did and flew back. I went to Washington, the state of Washington. We were flying out of Tacoma. Fort Lewis is where we went. So I was with a group. We started talking on the plane and found out that we were assigned to, I believe it was the 113th Evac hospital. And then there was either a rumor or truth or whatever that this was a POW hospital. And we were thinking, what on earth, And I was thinking, what's going on? We went, when we finally got in country and we were landing at Long Binh, standing on the runway was my fiance. He took me in, as well as many of the nurses. He had gotten permission to get 2 days leave, and he was stationed at Marble Mountain. He was a chopper pilot with the Sea Knights at Marble Mountain, and CH-46s. So he had already talked to the chief nurse, and the 113th Evac, the POW hospital, really, there were a couple male nurses, and they were the only ones that went. And everybody was split up and went to different hospitals throughout the country. And Glenn Ford, my fiance, made sure that the nurses that were going up to I Corps near Da Nang, where he was stationed, he accompanied us there and made sure we had transportation to the hospitals in whether they were Chu Lai or Da Nang or the areas around there. So the next few months, I worked, when I first got in country, we were working 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week. And it was quite heavy, of course. And he was flying very heavy. His tour was almost up. He was due to rotate back to the United States in April. And despite the heavy workloads, we were still able to see each other about every 10 days. And it was really special.
So you're in Da Nang?
Yes.
And what's
at the 95th Evac
95th, okay.
Hospital, yes.
And you are an RN?
Yes, a nurse. I was first lieutenant.
Okay.
And I was on the acute surgical ward.
And that is like an ICU unit? Or
no, it's a step down from the ICU.
Okay.
And
was it, when you're being trained for I've talked to World War II nurses, so it's interesting. I've talked to over 6 of them. and they're 85-year-old women now or older.
Yes.
And they told me some tremendous stories of some funny and some very serious stories.
Mm-hmm.
But are you trained for what you actually experienced there, or it was a lot of the things that you saw, things that you never thought you'd ever see, or was it a pretty stable unit that you're on? I mean, what kind of patients did you take care of?
Well, those are quite a few questions all at once.
Well,
but
ask me about
at
kind of the
medical,
patients.
Oh, the patient. Okay. On my ward, it was really two. The 95th was a collection of Quonset huts, and you have a main hallway, and opposite on each side were wards, A and B, and you'd have the surgical unit and the sterile supply, ICU, X-ray, and so forth. And then as you went down, there were the wards. The next step was where I was, the acute surgical ward. We took care of multiple things, many orthopedics, chest wounds, and most of the head wounds stayed in the ICU. At the 95th Evac, the motto was conserve the fighting force. And if a patient was able to return to duty within 30 days, we kept them. They convalesced at the evac hospital and were sent back to their unit. If it would take about 90 days, they were sent down to Camaraderie Bay, where they received care after, of course, we had stabilized them and they could be transported, and they were returned to their unit. From 90 days to 120 days, that was a ticket to Japan, and beyond that, that was a ticket to home.
So you're receiving casualties from the front lines? Are these helicopters coming to you, or are you the secondary?
There's a helicopter pad right across from triage and the ER. Well, it's really triage. And we received anything that came our way. Many of them were first treated at the site of injury or a field hospital. And then that was just to stabilize, get fluids going, get them started so they could make the flight and get them to the evac hospital. Yes.
But again, so a lot of these Huey helicopters that are coming in from the combat areas are coming to your hospital?
Yes, yeah.
So they're being pulled right in, and
some
of these stories you hear about, a lot of these things are happening right outside there, and then they're bringing them in on a gurney, just like today's EMS system, basically.
Yes. In fact, many of the things that we do here in the United States are based on what we learned there. When I was over there, we were still using glass bottles for IVs, but towards the end, they learned in Vietnam to use the plastic ones. The same thing with chest tubes and chest bottles and things like that. In February, when I was there was an ammo dump that blew up down the beach at one of the Marine facilities, and the whole place shook. And we were trying to secure all these glass bottles and everything to make sure that there was no injuries. And so those kind of things helped. Treating wounds the way we do today, a lot of it came out of Vietnam.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see that. So again, in the acute unit, these patients are seriously injured, or within 30 days?
No, the acute, we would, again, it depended on what kind of patients we were receiving. If they were U.S. Soldiers, Marines, then that was the system. When we were not filled to capacity, then we were treating the civilian population and the Vietnamese troops, or the Koreans that or the mountain yards or anybody else that helped us, we were treating them.
Are there any, in your patient contact, meant what? What type of things were you doing with the patients?
Anything that you would normally do with them. I'm trying to.
I mean, were you changing Band-Aids? Were you giving them back rubs? Were you talking to them?
Oh, well,
starting IVs?
if they need, yeah, of course, IVs all the time, giving them antibiotics, changing dressings, doing whatever they need, blood, whatever. And many of them were in traction, and we kept them. It depended on the patients that were receiving. If we were getting a lot in, then we shipped a lot out as fast as we could. It depended on what the patient loads were at other facilities, and such as that. Yes.
And so, what are your thoughts at this time? I mean, war is hell. I mean, what are you thinking about when you're treating all these casualties and seeing all this? I mean, is it like, does it make sense, or is it just a job to you? Or, I mean, how do you feel? Compassion towards these soldiers and Marines?
Well, a lot of things happened while I was over there, obviously. I grew up over there. Before I went over there, I was reared in a family, that was gun-ho government and service, and felt that Uncle Sam was always right. And during that time that I was there, I realized that that was not the case, and things didn't happen that way. To tell you a little bit about what happened was that, like I said, when I was first over there and seeing my fiance quite frequently and working very hard and going to Bob Hope's show and talking to patients and taking care of patients, things went very, very well. It was, it was quite an experience. Such as one of the older nurses, one of the majors got a Sara Lee chocolate cake sent to her, and she found out that it was Glenn's birthday in November, so she gave it to me, and we had a birthday party. He was able to come over, and he came over for Thanksgiving and things like that. Around Christmas time, they took a lot of hits, and he had a lot of runs, and it was pretty heavy in his squadron. So on January the 7th, he went down to do a courier run, pick up the mail at Chulai, and his chopper went down, and he was missing in action for 10 months. And that's how I met my husband, because in February he was at the hospital, and that happened to be the day that the ammo dump was blowing up. He was going crazy. His eyes were bandaged. They stuck him on a floor on my ward, where we had a lot of much sicker patients. He really didn't require any acute nursing care. So I told him how to get to the bathroom by himself and gave him a pack of cigarettes and said, "Don't bother me." And later on we got to talking, and I found out where he was located and thought that he might have some information about Glenn's chopper. And so he contacted me every once in a while just to find out if I did find out anything or what was going on, and we kept in touch. Later on, after I got back to the States, learned of the wreckage and the death, and after that, Gabe was married at the time, and he also lost his wife, and so we kept in touch, and our relationship grew. He could understand me, having the experience of Vietnam, and I could understand his, and we could also understand and share the feelings of loss. So,
Did you, obviously you talked to a lot of these patients. Is there anybody that comes to mind, maybe a conversation that you had or something that...
Oh, there's many things. When I was at Fort Ord, before I went over to Vietnam, I worked on the maternity ward and labor and delivery for a while, but most of the time I spent in orthopedics. And I recall one young man who was a double amputee, and his wife came in with their infant girl. She was born while he was overseas, so he hadn't seen her before. I was so impressed by her. The tenderness, concern, the loyalty. And he was able to rise above his injuries. And his challenge, his greatest thing that he wanted to do, was to be fitted with prosthesis and be able to walk before his daughter did. And so he became almost a model for the men that were there. And there were so many. They were all very young, good looking, very, very young, with lives in front of them, but many with severe injuries. And yet we did a lot of things that were enjoyable, were funny. Even in Vietnam, I turned to that. We turned to each other to give each other comfort. We drank a lot. Sometimes I went over to the wards when you were off duty and play cards with the guys who were waiting before they would go back to their unit or something like that. When I first got over there, I got in trouble because we weren't supposed to go anywhere. We were supposed to stay on compound. Everything was very secure and hot. And we'd go flying off on any helicopter we could go on, and or riding in any jeep or ambulance or any place. There were several thousand women over there, round eyes, and many, many men. And so you could go and you were invited to almost any club, any dinner, any party that was going on. So we lost ourselves in that, or tried to. When I was in basic training, one of the women that was there with me, who went to Vietnam also at the same time, I believe she was at the 91st that was down the beach. She went over to Vietnam just to keep her brother from going. Her brother was drafted, and she knew that her chances of getting back would be much greater than his. And so she made sure she was over there and remained over there until his duty was up and he'd be home. Yeah.
Was there a camaraderie among yourselves? I'm sure there was, like the soldiers out in the field, and how about the nurses in the hospital, and I'm sure there was. I mean, you had closeness. Did you get pretty close to them?
Well, everybody, yes, you did. Some more than others. I guess I was going through a lot, and having a hard time with it. And so maybe, I think probably I might not have been as easy to reach or having difficulty with that. I did have, some very close friends. One particular nurse came back and we shared a room and an apartment back at Stateside when we got back, and until she got married. But, that kind of thing. So yes, you did. You turned to each other for comfort. It didn't necessarily have to be at the 95th, because there were a lot of other groups there at Da Nang. And so it just, and your paths crossed in many ways for a lot of different people.
Do you ever wonder what happened to a lot of those young men that were injured?
Yes, and you talk to them, you see the pictures of their families. Some wrote to me afterwards and proposed, the angel of whoever at their bedside, that kind of stuff. It was just, when I got back to the States, things like MASH, I could not watch. It was too close to home. There was a lot of stuff that was similar, And it took a long time for me to be able to appreciate that and laugh at that a lot. I've talked to several friends that were over there, had experiences like I did, and they've shared those same feelings, yes. Yeah.
Well, what do you think it was about MASH? It was so close to reality?
There are some things, yes. If painted on top of painted on top of the roofs at the 95th Evac, if you were to focus in on your camera, you would see great big letters of FTA and things like that, One of the fellows who was a radiology technician, always partying, always, having a lot to say, just a real joker. When the night that he was to leave, he got so drunk and so polluted, we put him in a spica cast, which is double legs all the way up your chest, a bar between your knees, and stuck a tag on his toe and shipped him out that way. When he woke up, he didn't know what had happened, and nobody told him, and he went to the States that way. and things that were funny, because you had to have humor and you had to make a joke of stuff.
Well, just like in any medical hospital around the country. I mean, there's a lot of trauma, a lot of things.
Yeah, and there's some black humor too, yes. But we took in a lot of different people. Many times, some of the nurses, doctors, medics would go for med caps, where we'd go into the communities around the area, the little villages around the area, try to inoculate them for typhoid and cholera and treat wounds, bring in many to the hospital that needed care. Things like that. There was the ship Helgoland, which was a German ship that treated pediatrics mostly. And so one of our neurosurgeons went over there frequently when he was off duty and could, to work there. We visited the hospital, the hospital in Da Nang. That was staffed mostly by foreign groups, and that was where they used a lot of our leftover supplies that they could get their hands on, and it was really education to see that situation, you know. And
So, do you think about Vietnam a lot now, like some of the soldiers years later, or is it something that's in the past and you don't think about it anymore?
for about 40 years, I've been trying to block a lot of it out. And
what are you trying to block out? The bad stuff or just the whole thing?
I don't think that we're accomplishing anything, and I didn't feel that it was successful, and I saw too much injury, hurt, destruction of individuals and families, and not any purpose for it.
Do you think that's any different than what's happening in America right now with all the things that are going on in the country and, 50,000 people getting killed every year in the highways? And
Yes, I do. That's a lot different than being in a war. The old saying that war is hell. And I don't think that it has ever accomplished anything. It was a different type of war in World War II. When you had the Germans, you did have the Japanese bombing Pearl Harbor, and that was a whole different thing. And you had a country that supported it. The whole country went to war. Everybody contributed. They gave their tires, they gave everything. But Vietnam was not an American war. It was selective. The loneliest time I think I ever had was when I came home and landed, processed out at Fort Lewis. And there was no one there. And the only thing you heard on the TV when you went to the hotel, I crossed out it that night and was out of the service because my time was up, and went to the airport, and the whole news was against the war. But the people around you, they weren't affected by it. Life went on, and as it does today. There's a big difference between them. Yes.
We're just about out of time. Are you proud to be a veteran of Vietnam?
I'm not. What is the opposite of being proud? Not. Yes, I'm not a real flag waver. If anybody asks me, I said yes, and sometimes I'll volunteer it. Yes, and yes, I am. Yes, I am. That I know what it's about. That in some small way there are people that I have helped. It changed my life. But when my son was walking up the stairs one day and I looked at his long legs, and I was just so thankful that we didn't have a draft and that he would not be part of that and have to experience it. I was elated, just elated. There's so much more that I'd like to share with you, and I
Like what?
I can't recall right now. It's just going out.
Well, you've shared some good things. You've really shared what I wanted to hear, so if that makes you feel any better. There may be other things you want to talk about, but I had some specific questions, and you've answered those very well. And I'm sure we could sit and talk for quite a while about things, but I think as far as what I want to do and how I want to piece this together in the documentary, I think you've done very well. So I hope you're proud of what you did. I mean, I am. I mean, just talking to you, I mean, I think what you both have done is very commendable. And I'll ask you one quick question, and then I'm going to stop. Okay. How should I report Vietnam? Because I have those that feel like you do, but I have those that feel that we should have been in Vietnam. We did accomplish a goal, and they may not agree with every single thing, but I mean, so I'm stuck with a hard situation because I've listened to both of you, and yet I've talked to a lot of people that, you know, fully supported what we did, why we did it, and would do it again. You know?
I feel very ambivalent about that question.
No, I agree with a lot of what you both said, and
I understand.
I'm kind of like because I'm coming from a standpoint of hearing. I've heard so many stories in the last year and a half, even World War II or Korea. But it's like, you know, how do I do history justice? I guess kind of like, you know, how do I tell the people that don't know anything about Vietnam? You know?
That's a hard one, and it's a hard one. Like when I face or I look at the family, Glenn's family, and his sisters, and what it did to his mother.
Oh, yeah.
And how can you say, and how can I say, that he died for nothing? Or all those other people died for nothing? Or all the young men that came home with no legs, or head wounds, or situations, or the anguish, the mental anguish that just won't go away. And you say that's for nothing. How can you say that?
Who said this for nothing?
The people that you're saying. I mean, you know, how can I say all of that happened for absolutely nothing, that their lives are worth nothing?
No, but who said that again? You didn't say that.
Okay. I'm saying that you. Okay, you were asking me the question.
No, the people that I'm talking about said that it wasn't in vain.
Yeah.
There was a purpose.
There was a purpose,
Yeah,
right,
of course,
right.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And I'm saying that I don't think that war has a.
I think you made a comparison between World War II,
Right,
countries
right.
supporting. My
Right.
question is, why wouldn't people support the Vietnam happenings like they did World War II? Something crept in, and something happened to where the country became divided.
Gabe and I have talked about that a bit. And I think a lot of it, he was talking about it being time in the United States and the support of it. And if you can go in and take an action and accomplish something and it's over with, I think you'd have everybody's support. But if something that is dragged on and on and on, you lose that support. And I have a feeling that has a lot to do with it. Really do.
Probably so, yeah. And it was a different kind of war, too. It was more of a guerrilla warfare where the Germans and the Japanese were uniformed, organized enemy. It wasn't a shoot you in the back type of war. You advanced, you took ground, and then you went on. Vietnam wasn't like that.
And it wasn't a partial thing. You did it at all costs. You did it. You didn't say, oh, I can't do this. I can't hurt them this way. It has to be only certain things are off limits and all of this stuff, and your hands are tied. You know, you either go out and do it and with all the support you can, or you don't do it. You handle it politically in other ways. But to send troops in and do things halfway, you know.
But what I admire about the military that I've talked to is that when it got down to it, they did what their country asked them to do.
They did.
And, you know, a lot of them said they were there for a job, and my job wasn't politics, or I hear things like that. You know,
Right,
so,
right.
So it's been kind of a unique adventure for me, but hope you didn't misunderstand what I said earlier, because I wasn't, everybody's life is precious.
Absolutely,
You know,
absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
I feel for the families. I mean, of course, and you saw firsthand the effects of war, and now 40 years later, even with Vietnam, I've talked to World War II veterans that are still suffering from over 60 years ago when they fought. Just what happened to them, and they'll never forget it. You know, they said they'll never forget it.
Yeah. But you know, we had some great times. The people that are there, if you all are doing under the same conditions, and if they're bad especially, you pull together and you make the best of things. Of course, we did a lot of drinking, that's for sure, but we did some partying too. We really did, and that was good. I can remember one night with the monsoons, we had movies like they do on MASH,
Sure.
and then smuggling in booze to a lot of the patients that couldn't get it. So filling up bottles of and most of it liquor, and they'd pass them around, and nobody would know about it. But it was okay. It was okay. We had fun. You asked before about marijuana and drugs, and there were drugs. A lot of them we'd find on the Vietnamese that came in to be treated, and they would have the tin cans of the cracker cans and stuff like that, and it would be full of marijuana. That was their currency, because it was light and cheap for them. They could grow it, and then when the Philco Ford came in to do work, they were contracted in to put in some air conditioners and stuff, and they would have their breaks, and everybody be smoking pot. I mean and you could smell it. I mean, there's no way you could get away from that. Now that was they were contracted. Those were civilian contractors. Yeah.